Well, I think when it comes to the conflict in the Middle East, the war between Iran and the United States, the er, the most important comments coming from Israelis, mostly Benjamin Netanyahu. He said that we must complete the mission in Iran in a way that constitutes a final solution. A final
Yeah.
solution. The
Yeah.
message.
Yeah.
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 Not a good use of language, by the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
But he's very guarded about that. So when he does say something like that, beware.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't use these terms loosely. Sometimes he uses them for what you might call deterrent impact, but sometimes he means what he's saying when he says it. And what he's doing in Lebanon right now, unconscionable. It's beginning to look like another Gaza. Haaretz this morning called it, it didn't call it a genocide yet. It called it ethnic cleansing. That's a pretty strong phrase for them to be using. And I think they're right. Where's he going to stop? Is he going to stop like he did in 1982 because he's getting his ass handed to him by the other side? Maybe, I don't know. But where is he going to stop if he's not? Where's he going to stop if he's got a little power left? And what does it mean with regard to his concentration on, should Trump decide to go back to war with Iran? Does he move all of his forces, or those forces that be necessary, principally the IAF? Does he move them over to join Trump in a week or two of resume bombing of Iran? Or does he continue what he's doing in Lebanon? Without the IAF, he's somewhat limited, because that's the only thing really that's saving him from a really domineering Hezbollah with regard to his tanks and other elements of the ground forces, who are being roundly beaten, battle after battle, incident after incident, I should be saying. I don't know where we go here in terms of the theaters that he's involved in terms of this morning, Haaretz said he's got 51 now. I think that's the postulation. So he's got a majority if the election were to occur right now. And they're talking about other people than Naftali Bennett and Lapid and others that were, shall we say, in the running, Benny Gantz maybe. They're talking about other people now in possible competition with Netanyahu, which means things are opening up a little bit on the political scene in Israel. What does all this mean in terms of what you just said? Remember when I was quoting that, he said it in Hebrew amongst his select few, Ben Gvir, Smotrich, and others, when he said they will get a surprise that they're not expecting. That and the final solution sort of reflects the same thing.
Yeah.
Larry, here is what Jonathan Pollard said, the Israeli spy, about the use of nukes. Here is what he said.
Yeah. Traitor
the
Pollard.
West, nuclear weapons at any level, tactical, strategic, EMPs, whatever, are viewed as something that should only be used as a last resort. And even then, very carefully, on an escalation ladder, as they say. With me, I don't care if you start throwing nukes immediately, responsibly, but immediately. And a case that I've been pushing is the use of an electromagnetic pulse weapon or weapons against Iran. Why are we waiting to get hit?
How do you use a nuclear weapon initially responsibly?
Yeah.
That's the question of the day.
I mean, look at Pollard. He looks like Jabba the Hutt with a beard. Okay. I mean, there's just he is just an unconscionable, despicable human being. And to cavalierly discuss the use of a nuclear weapon, again, for what? To what end? To what purpose? Just having a big explosion somewhere doesn't, Israel, even with all of its nukes, it does not have the ability to wipe Iran off the face of the earth. And Iran has made it very clear, any such attack will be retaliated with on a massive scale. That Iran has. So it's, this is not a recipe for peace. This is a recipe for utter destruction. And the likely result would be the utter destruction of Israel. So, we could call that the silver lining. But, to get there, it would just, again, it enters into a dimension of horror that someone like Pollard can just talk about it so cavalierly. This is a consequential week, and what's taking place at the White House right now, they're trying to press. They think they have the leverage to coerce Israel or coerce Iran into a deal. But Iran's sitting there and they're watching now what Israel is doing. Israel has they've broken the ceasefire. Yeah. I mean, the ceasefire was predicated upon stopping the attacks in Lebanon, particularly in Beirut. They're attacking Beirut now. Yep. And Iran's made it clear, if you do that, we're going to start retaliating. So I think the odds are quite high that this war is going to reignite, and there's going to be a far greater destruction, both for the Israelis and for U.S. military presence in the area. Yeah, Iran's going to suffer too. I don't want to minimize that at all. But, I had to go back and look it up. The dynamics with the Gulf Arabs, they're not a united front. I mean, it's almost like a reality TV show in which all they're locked into a house and they all hate each other. So, 9 years ago, you had Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates all pissed off at Qatar because Qatar had its relationship with Turkey, and Qatar was also supplying support to Hamas or Hezbollah, and the Saudis and the UAE said, by God, we're not going to allow that to happen. And the one country that came to Qatar's aid was Iran. So here's Iran, who'd built up this positive relationship. And then over the last during this last year, you had Saudi Arabia and UAE pissing on each other. So like I said, there's no common, the Gulf Arabs don't have some common bond that draws them together. And this is where the role of Pakistan and China come into play, because in China in particular, with its economic power, the Saudis, the Qataris, the Emiratis, they all want to do business with China because they recognize China is the future. The United States is not the future. China is. And so China wields some enormous influence on that. So I think there are some dynamics underway here that are outside of the control of the United States, particularly on the economic front.
Yeah. Carl, Larry said that the war would be devastating for Iran, and many people know that in Iran. They're talking every day, every minute, they're talking about how this war has been devastating for Iran so far and what would be the consequences of the continuation of the war. But the main point on their side is, what else do we have?
Well, exactly. And I make Larry's point even stronger if I can. If you apply the final solution, if the final solution for Bibi Netanyahu is use of nuclear weapons, you are not going to do anything more to defeat Iran. You're just going to make them more resolute, and you're going to make them unleash everything they have on everybody in sight. So this is not something they should be contemplating from the very practical point of view. They do not have the power to do it. They think they do. And people with nuclear weapons generally tend to think that way. Take the North Koreans, for example. They do have an inventory of weapons, but it's a deterrent. That's about it. If they were to unleash every one of those weapons on South Korea, they would be ultimately defeated. There's no doubt in my mind about that. The question is it worth that kind of destruction and that kind of ignominy to do that? Because you're going to disappear. There'd be no question about the reunification of the peninsula at that point. So all to say, nuclear weapons are not a game ender necessarily, unless they're possessed in the types, models, missiles, and so forth, and the huge capacity for destruction of the whole planet that we in Russia possess. Now, that is a very, very dangerous accumulation of weapons, world ending if they were all used. But I don't want to make light of nuclear weapons, certainly, but it's not something that Bibi ought to be counting on being something that will end everything and in his favor, because it won't. It'll make an even worse pariah of him than he already is. When you look at these people, you look at the people around him like Lapid and Naftali Bennett, and even some of the ones who pretend to be a little more less draconian, they really are all cut from the same cloth. They came from the same cloth the Nazis came from, the same cloth Hitler came from. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. And if you look at what they're doing and what we're helping them to do to international law, which no longer really exists, just our attacks on the high seas, killing now over 200 people, as I understand it, without due process, have killed international law. So we've murdered whatever we put in place after World War II with reasonably good intentions. We've murdered it. It no longer exists.